And Maria Teresa Feliciano has been doing a wonderful job, and Nestor, Mr. Chairman, for all of the work that you're doing. As the borough president, I wanted to come by and welcome the Dominican American National Roundtable. I want to thank you for a number of reasons. I want to thank you for the work that you do. I want to thank you because you are a national organization. Of course, you have delegations here from Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and the list goes on and on. But you could have chosen any other place, and yet, from Florida, I don't want to get in trouble here, from all over the United States, but you decided to be right here with us en el condado de la Salsarengue, el condado de Papa Dios. So, and I wanted to thank you for that. Give yourself a strong round of applause for being here once again. The work that you do is not easy. The work that you do is, unfortunately, quite often, is not put into perspective as to how you affect people's lives. I just want you guys to know that in 1990, in the city of New York, 41% of the Dominican population lived in Manhattan. And it was 27% of that population that lived in the Bronx. Fast forward in 2009, it's reversed. 41% of the Dominican population in New York City lives in the Bronx, and about 28% in Manhattan. I want to congratulate you on the types of conversation that you're having here and that you have nationally, because in the Bronx, for those of you who don't know, there are 1.4 million residents. 1.4 million. 53% of the residents are Latinos, and you already know that the Dominican community is about 400,000 strong here in our borough. So whatever conversation you have with this roundtable, whether it's in the state of New York or in your home state or nationally, in one way, shape, or form, being that we have the largest Dominican population outside of the Dominican Republic, you are helping the people of the Bronx. As the borough president, I'm here to say thank you for that. I'm here to say thank you for your sacrifice. I'm here to say thank you for your investment. I'm here to say thank you for your commitment. Because when you look at the borough and the way that it's growing and the way that it's come back, and when you look at the book that is being written about the borough of the Bronx, you can't really write that book without a strong chapter of how wonderful of a contribution the Dominican community has done here in our borough. When you look at our borough and you speak of economic development, and I know over yesterday, today, and over the duration of this discussion, you're going to speak about economic development. Here in the Bronx, over the last 8 years, we've seen over $11 billion in private investment in our borough. And yet, with all of the numbers that we just discussed on Latinos and Dominicans here, yet we're still #1 in unemployment and #1 in poverty rates. How can that be? If, for those of you who live in Florida, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Maryland, whatever your county is, wherever you live in the United States, if we or if government pumped in or private sector pumped in $11 billion over the next 8 years, there's no way that you will be #1 in unemployment and #1 in poverty rates. It is mind-boggling. It is inconceivable. And the reason being is that, for whatever reason, people are making money here, but they're not doing business with us. That's the type of conversation that needs to happen. When you look at government and what government can do, you have women minority business enterprise. The thing is, are we doing our share in making sure, forget about enforcement, forget about getting a governor or a mayor to commit to a percentage of women and minority-owned businesses. When the time comes, do we have the businesses that are being registered so they could be even considered? At the Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation, which is the economic arm of my office, we're doing more of that. Because every time we go to a developer and we say, build with minority-owned businesses, build with those Dominicans, men and women who come here with an entrepreneur mentality. And when we see the registry, we just don't have enough people, and we give them the excuse for why we're not being used, for why our community is not benefiting from this boom. They say an economic crisis. What's happening in the Bronx is mind-boggling. In the last 18 months alone, there's $440 million in housing investment here alone. And yet they say the economy is bad. There are people and pioneers like Ruben Diaz, Senator Diaz. When everybody ran from our borough, when everybody took away jobs and all the banks ran, he's a senator today. But before that, he was an employer here in the borough. He was able to employ the largest amount of Dominicans of any industry, any enterprise through home care services for senior centers. That's what Ruben Diaz did. When you look at the city of New York's educational system is billions and billions of dollars strong. How much is dedicated to GED classes? When you look at the population of the Bronx, it's increased. We all know that. The census was out there. Dr. Chiesa, Reverend Diaz, many of you here, the higher ed institutions, the New York Hispanic Clergy Organization, we knocked on doors, we put out vehicles, we let the conversation, we let the people say, déjate contar. And you know what happened? The Bronx is the only borough in the city of New York where the population went up. And while we have 40% of the population, almost 40% of the population that was born in another country, you saw English as a second language and English language learners and bilingual classes go down. How can that be? How can that be if we tell people, let yourself be counted, you're gonna get more resources if that's the case, and you're coming from other countries, why is it that our programs are diminishing here in our borough? That's why next weekend here we're gonna have an education summit, and that's gonna be one of the topics of conversation. When you look at politics, and I'm glad that you're having the Dominican Let's Talk with African Americans and Dominican Let's Talk with Puerto Ricanos, and I'm glad that that conversation is happening. Everybody looks at the city of New York and say, oh, you know, we haven't had a Latino citywide elected official ever in the history of the city. Forget about that. For most of us, and I don't want to get too political, and I know this is not a political organization, but I am a little political. My father made me that way. We haven't had a Democrat elected in 20 years in the city of New York. A Democrat. And so we have, when we come together, how is it that we're going to have a citywide Latino elected official? How do we get to that point? Nestor, I'm going to finish right now for a minute. I feel you already. This is the last point I'm going to make. That gentleman right there is African American. Stand up for a minute. They need to see you, Carl Hasty. Carl Hasty is my friend. He's an assemblyman. He's African American. He's the boss of the Democratic Party here in the borough of the Bronx. I'm Puerto Rican. I'm the borough president. Let me tell you how sophisticated we've gotten with politics here. When a Jewish state senator went on to become the Attorney General of the state of New York, in Eric Schneiderman, there was an election for that Senate seat. A Dominican, an African-American county chairman, a Puerto Rican borough president, went and we supported a Dominican and my brother Adriano Espaillat. And not only did we support him, but the community that helped Adriano get elected was the Jewish community of Riverdale. Think about that sophistication. Think about where we're going so far. And so I commend Nesta, I commend Maria, I commend all of you for being here. I commend for the conversation. There's a lot of work that we need to do, but there are also a lot of little successes that we can pinpoint. We need to be sophisticated. It's okay to be passionate. It's okay to be emotional, but we have to be intellectual, sophisticated, and targeted. And when that day comes, you'll see that the future is ours. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you so much.